There's a lot going on with eSports, and I think it has some interesting impact in entertainment and technology. And I think more than anything, it's a kind of an indicator of the cultural change we're all trying to put a finger on of over the top and streaming and screens and kids and games, and what does it all mean? Quick question, arm exercises. Who watches some form of professional sport? Okay. Who has, and this is more for you than me, so please look around the room as we do this. Who has played an athletic sport through their education or life, recreationally or otherwise? Okay. Who currently is a professional athlete? All right. Who plays games? It's a very general term. I don't care if it's Sudoku or anything like that. Okay. Who plays specifically strategy games? Chess, Go, anything that's strategic? Okay, those are my questions. In the interest of time, I have composed this as a documentary presentation. It's a lot of people and a lot of interesting variables going on, so to consolidate it down, I've made it a video. I'll be back up to answer questions later, so let's do it.
What is an esport? How has gaming evolved? What types of games are played? What are the similarities between traditional and esports production? Where do esports fit into the entertainment economy?
Throughout our evolution, the complexity of our play has mirrored the complexity of our minds and culture. Some games we play are physical challenges of speed and agility. Some are games of chance. But the oldest and most consistent through our history is the strategic simulation of war and the fight for territory.
Let battle commence. After they've advanced their armies, the next thing we'll see is artillery firing using the range stick we saw at Edge Hill.
In the 1970s, an offshoot of wargaming was created called Dungeons & Dragons. D&D shifted the focus from reenactment to fantasy, and from competing against other players to working together as a team.
And each has an elaborate scoring sheet for his character, with points for wisdom and strength and the like.
Around the same time, large mainframes were popping up on college campuses, and students quickly figured out a way to hack them, porting the base concepts of D&D into digital form called multi-user dungeons. Users spread across a geographic area could dial in and play these text-based adventures together in real time.
Shall we play a game?
Video arcades offered a more visual and accessible way to play games on a computer. Though the games were only 1 or 2 player, arcades would provide a social space where people could not only play, but watch others, looking for tips and tricks to increase their high score.
Wow! He's playing Donkey Kong!
Game systems continued to be miniaturized, made modular, and delivered to the home. This had the side effect of pulling players out of the arcade, making the experience less social, and reserving spectatorship to live competitive events. However, oversaturation caused the market to go from boom to bust, with many game makers going out of business, leaving the field open for the Nintendo Entertainment System.
Nintendo quietly watched as American companies quit the business. Nintendo then bought licenses to the best of the arcade games. They created new games by getting independent designers to compete against each other for the right to work with Nintendo.
Nintendo's success would set off what would be known as the console wars, with Sega, Sony, and Microsoft joining the battle for dominance. In South Korea, PC gaming flourished, and with it, a rich culture of social gaming. The popularity of PC bongs, a combination cafe, restaurant, and arcade, would reflect the prevalence of gaming in the population. As the internet became faster and more available, players from around the world could connect and compete.
Well, to get started, you'll need to get connected to the internet. You do that through an internet service provider.
An internet service provider? What's that?
Multiplayer gameplay on the internet was good, but it lacked the natural ability for others to watch.
Yeah, so in the early days of esports, spectating was very crude. There was no streaming video. I mean, there wasn't video, period. There was no YouTube or anything like that. So when you wanted to spectate a game, you would have to load up the game, you'd have to join a spectator client, which was usually another member of the server, and then you would have to sync up like an audio feed, basically like an internet radio station that was casting the match.
The popularity of esports is exploding, and so far the two main companies that have profited from the trend are YouTube and live streaming game app Twitch, which Amazon bought for nearly $1 billion last year.
Twitch helped solve the problem of connecting players and spectators. It also created a new hybrid gamer/independent content producer known as a streamer.
Donations are built into both platforms. YouTube has Super Chat and Twitch has Bits. Both of these let a viewer send some money along with a message and pin it to chat to make sure that the streamer sees it.
There's a great example of a guy named Dr. Disrespect. He's a Twitch streamer. I don't want to date this interview, but yesterday he came back from his break to the tune of 400,000 people watching him all at the same time, people dropping money. And you try to figure out how did he crack that code?
So now, the technology is at a level where spectators can watch and interact with players anywhere in the world in real time. But what are they watching?
Well, the most popular games are MOBAs, which stands for Multiplayer Online Battle Arenas. League of Legends pits two teams of 5 players against each other. Think of it as a combination of chess and capture the flag. Each character has special roles to play, and everyone has to work together to take over the enemy base. MOBAs require teamwork, but other games pit players against each other one-on-one. In StarCraft 2, players battle by controlling entire armies. This is a game of strategy, but quick reflexes are needed here. Pro players can carry out 10 actions in the game per second. Another popular genre, first-person shooters. In Counter-Strike, players team up to complete objectives while shooting anyone who gets in their way. Now, it was first released back in 1999, and now it's one of the most popular games in esports. And finally, there's Street Fighter. Now, this classic is one of a number of fighting games that still attract an audience. It's a link back to the early days of competitive gaming, when people would crowd arcades to watch top players, and now you can watch it all online.
As video games continue to grow in popularity and live streaming capability improves, along with access to live stream games from mobile devices, the popularity of esports is exploding.
Twitch was bought out for nearly $1 billion in 2014,
Revenue from
and it now
esports and
touts more than
streaming will amount
100
to an
million
estimated
users.
$1.8 billion in 2017, and that's expected. Approximately 300 million people worldwide are expected to tune into esports this year, and that number is expected to grow to 500 million by 2020.
And the esports economy is expected to eclipse 1.5 billion by 2020, behind growth and brand investment.
And that's expected to crest 3.5 billion by 2021, according to a report from Juniper Research.
Riot Games, a division of Tencent Holdings, is the world's largest video game publisher by revenue, and the creator of League of Legends, which paid out over $5 million in prizes for League play in its 2016 World Championship.
Within the last couple of months, the Houston Rockets, Cleveland Cavaliers, and Golden State Warriors have paid $13 million each for a franchise in the North American League of Legends Championship Series.
The LCS will use revenue sharing to split money between Riot, the teams, and players. Both Riot and teams will contribute some money to a revenue pool from media rights, sponsors, merch sales, and team-branded digital goods.
You think about the size of the number of people, like Call of Duty, 40 million people are playing and watching that game on an annual basis. Potentially you can deliver an audience of a similar size and caliber to what Thursday Night Football is, and then obviously there's a lot of monetization there.
Soldiers, scientists, adventurers, oddities. Over 20 million players have started their watch. Now we want to showcase the world's greatest Overwatch players. Blizzard Entertainment is proud to announce the Overwatch League.
I'm joined now by Bobby Kotick, the CEO of Activision Blizzard, the gaming giant, Robert Kraft, CEO of the Kraft Group, as well as the New England Patriots. Now, Robert, you reportedly paid about $20 million for the rights to a team. Do you think the potential is really about building this into a live events business in Boston?
We do. We see it as a great opportunity.
So you have eSports as a whole, which is all competitive gaming, but really it's broken up into individual components, and each of these things are huge and are selling out stadiums and they're selling out arenas.
And I know what you're thinking. Video games at a sold-out stadium, it's $200 just to get in the door. $1,000 if you want to be close to the stage.
I went to League of Legends Worlds last year, and they sold out the Staples Center. You have all of LA Live sold out, and then you have 1 million people watching online.
So ESL will take a Counter-Strike tournament that you could be watching at home, but they'll put it in Barclays, and they'll sell tickets to it, and they merchandise it. They sell jerseys for every team. I mean, they really do treat it as it is a traditional sporting event.
Now there is a large sports tournament with a multi-million-dollar prize taking place in Seattle right now. Now what sport is it? Competitive video games. The International is one of the biggest esports tournaments in the world.
I've been to the Key Arena for Sonics games when the Sonics played there, and I've never seen it sold out. I've seen kids watching Dota fill that arena and spill out onto the grass outside where they also have monitors set up to watch that tournament.
And Bobby, this is the first time esports teams have been done on a city-by-city basis. Why did you want to make it city-oriented?
So we thought the most important thing was getting local recognition and developing that local bond that fans have with their teams in their local markets. But it's never been done on a global basis.
I think what they're doing is very revolutionary in that they are basically franchising teams in each city, and then they're allowing those organizations to draft players from around the world.
You know, we think the NFL is the best sports entertainment product, but it's basically in the US, Mexico, Canada, England. But here's something that has a global appeal, and we think we have some business skills where we can take advantage of that to get a global audience.
Okay, so let's talk about the future of esports. I mean, esports on television still hasn't been a great success.
And ESPN has aired various esports competitions, though ratings haven't been as massive as expected.
The risk is that you produce the content poorly.
Time to take you into Skate or Dive to check out the action. It begins right here on the street.
I think the obvious trend of people wanting to play skill-based video games and other people wanting to watch them play is very clear. Now the next step we have to get to is we need companies to be able to create the content that's very attractive for everybody to watch in a television format.
But do you think it's just a matter of time before esports become televised on channels like ESPN?
You know, as someone who's been involved with gaming on television before, and someone who's been involved with, gaming and esports now, you're truly talking about a terrestrial audience versus a global audience. When you think about it from that regard, we've got fans this weekend watching the International in China, all over Southeast Asia, in Latin America, in Japan, all over Europe, in the United States. And this is something that can be experienced that way by all these individuals because it's delivered via a global medium.
Everyone who's into this stuff, whether it's fighting game tournaments, watching professional MOBA, whatever, it's all streamed. They watch streams. I don't know anyone who doesn't watch these things on streams.
This generation of gamers, we were talking mid-20s or even early 20s and before, they don't watch TV anymore.
No.
They probably couldn't find ESPN2 on the fucking dial.
I can't.
Remember the oldie days of the dial? They haven't heard of the dial. They're too young.
In comparing esports to kind of the traditional television sports model, the first thing you have to understand is the difference in the communities that are watching them. So with esports, you have really, really niche communities. You have people who only watch that one game. Because people who watch Counter-Strike don't watch League of Legends, don't watch Dota, don't watch Street Fighter, and vice versa. And they don't want to watch a 1 hour or a 2 or 3 hour broadcast. They want to watch a 12-hour tournament play out throughout the day.
Because of the nature of competitive gaming and esports, they tend to be really long events. They tend to not necessarily take commercial breaks. There's a lot of non-traditional things that go into the production of one of these large events.
Look at this pressure! Can he make it happen even more? Just like that, Mr. Street Fighter shows he came here to play!
So I switch every live show we do here. We do a lot of interview shows, but we have a lot of gaming tournaments. Like a typical production, you have cameras all over the place. We tend to do our stuff with 4 to 6 cams. So you have your commentator cams, you have your audience cams, your player cams. A lot of these tournaments like to incorporate like face cams on the players that they can just put in the little like corners of the screen, so you can kind of see their reactions while they play. But then you also have to incorporate all the gameplay feeds. Say with StarCraft, usually they do 1v1s, right? Or MOBAs, they do 5v5s. 5v5, that's 10. You can take all 10 inputs in, and that's only 10 things you're switching between. The top-downs cover so much, but even if you're on one player's input, you're seeing almost everything the other guy's doing too, because the battle is the whole screen. Some games are even really easy, like fighting games, it's usually one screen. So you don't need multiple cams. And there are games that have spectator cams, which are inside of the game. Some let you just fly around freely and follow the action, or some let you just switch between each player's perspective. Like say PUBG, for instance, player on the Battlegrounds. Most of the matches are 100-player games. It's just unreasonable to think you're gonna pump in all 100 feeds and someone's gonna try and monitor all 100 feeds and switch between 100 feeds of action. You're gonna have like multiple downstream TDs making that happen. If you have a private server, you can have the God Cam. The God Cam can fly around, like just full fly around. They can get down on the ground, they can get up in the air. So if you do it right, you have a cameraman in the game. Maybe it's someone who plays the game for a while, learns it, and then goes and practices in this mode and gets the hang of it. It's not any different. You're trying to get good shots. And if you have a good eye for good shots, it's going to translate. So you see some of the action going on, boom, you hop to that. So right now, we're kind of the house that Ross built. Okay. We're using mostly Ross equipment, Ross carbonite switcher, Ross router. We have a new expressions machine that we just got. It's just a lot of different frame rates, resolutions, or like, a lot of these machines don't have a way to put a reference input, obviously. So then you're having to frame sync things or run them through different converters that already have references. I have a few Teranexes they have reference in. Or if you can't get it to work through that way, we have little decimators and different scalers and things like that. One of the weirdest things that I had to get used to too is with the gamers, it's a gameplay first. And if they aren't happy, like it can throw the whole production. The smallest little like input lag, or maybe the video's 1 millisecond off, or the audio they can't hear just right. Sometimes they read a lot, or they all talk in these communities, so they think they need 144 hertz monitors to play a PlayStation game, and you're like, your PlayStation can't even push that. But like if they don't see it, if they don't see that monitor and know like that it's there, they'll say, oh, the monitor's messing us up, we didn't play right, we couldn't do it right. So we want these players to come back, and if they think they're coming into some lame production, they're gonna be out of here. But like a lot of these guys are streamers at home. They have a webcam and they have their XSplit, and Elgato makes a bunch of accessories for streamers. And one of them is basically a little mini switcher. It's like a little square, and you can tell it to set scenes basically, and you can just hit the button and it'll switch scenes. So they're kind of their own TD while they're playing. So they get used to this little like, oh, it's all compact, it's all this, whatever, and you try to show them all this big stuff, and they either think, oh, that's unnecessary, or oh, Elgato little switcher guy does it better, and you're just like, okay. As a TD or even directing some of these shows, I think the biggest difference is usually our live shows are just live. That's it. You're doing the show however long it is. There's not going to be a ton of breaks. There's not going to be commercials, really. Because the network themselves, like Twitch, rolls its own ads over what you're doing depending on someone's subscription level. Like they have premium subscribers that pay so that they don't have to see ads. But it's kind of automated, and you don't necessarily worry about it, and you just keep doing the show.
And so when you talk about integrating sponsorship and bringing corporate entities into it, I think what you're really talking about is embedding or baking in sponsorships to the broadcast.
I still feel like a lot of companies are trying to figure it out. They don't truly know. Like, even us here at Machinima, we're still trying to figure out, like, how do you sell into that? How do you monetize that? How do you grow these audiences from Amazon, Crackle, Hulu, Netflix, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook Watch?
So the new model of esports distribution is essentially to stream on every platform natively, rather than trying to get people off of one platform onto the platform that you own and control and want people to watch your content on. And the result of that is, number one, you get more viewers and more views across all these platforms. And number two, because you're baking in all the sponsorship, you can sell against all the views on all these platforms and not worry about the control of ad breaks and things like that.
While there is a lot of excitement around the financial potential of esports, $1.5 or even $3.5 billion in projected revenue is still a fraction of what athletic sports currently generate.
And how are you broadening the accessibility to this sporting sector, as you call it, beyond hardcore gamers?
So what we're realizing is that there's already a lot of viewers. We estimate that just League of Legends esports viewers is about 70 million in China. And esports viewers in general is about 220 million. So what we're doing is to continue better the production quality, the quality of our product, making sure that we have better analysts, better games, more competitive leagues. And then we'll continue to market to the hardcore gamers and make sure that the mass audience actually can understand our game better.
Esports. Should they be labeled a sport or a competition? There are a number of different sports that, like video games, don't fit in the definition of sport. I'm looking at you, darts. Seriously, how the hell are you a sport? The same can be said about chess and poker. They're not sports, but great competitions.
How do you respond to those who say, look, this isn't a sport, this is a sedentary activity, this is not a positive or healthy transition that's happening?
Well, it really depends on how you define sports. To me, sports is about having a competitive experience that can really excite the audience. So for us, right, we have a sport activity that fits all that criteria. It's highly competitive, takes a lot of training, really deep mastery curve, and now we have a thriving pro league scene and the ecosystem built around it.
Rick, you're an icon, NBA icon, but you were telling us that your 19-year-old son has made you feel differently about being an athlete? What do you mean?
He sure has. My son he didn't follow in my footsteps to become a professional athlete. He didn't play sports. But what he has been passionate about outside of his writing, he's a freshman in college, he's passionate about video gaming. Recently, he educated me on the fact that now that he's in college, they're actually giving college scholarships for video gaming.
You're kidding.
And it's even gone to the point that now the government has acknowledged professional video gamers as athletes. Now, I'm not saying that every kid that picks up a video game is a professional gamer.
So
right?
I don't know about
Not every person that picks up a basketball was a professional basketball player. There's a small percentage of people that have chosen that career path. And the more I watched my son pursue this career, and the more I watched him introduce me to the world as it is, which is professional gaming.
Right.
They're sponsored.
Yeah.
They have careers. They make hundreds of thousands of dollars. They are digital athletes. They're professional digital athletes. I did not say that every kid can be a professional gamer.
This is a conversation that I can guarantee you will come up again.
As advancements in technology continue to evolve the way we play, one thing is for certain. The future of esports lies with the players and the fans.
So the credits are kind of a work in progress. I'm putting up all the sources that were used in there, all the graphics. I understand that they weren't up on the screen for very long. It's hard to read. But I'm linking to all the websites and the statistical sources that were used for the infographics and stuff like that. It's still a work in progress. There's more coming, but I mean, I plan on leaving it up indefinitely as kind of the additional information for that. That's all I have. I mean, I could talk about this for a very long time, but do you have any questions? Questions, thoughts, comments? How much time do I have? A couple minutes? All right. Well, I'll start talking while you're thinking. You know, the thing with the Nintendo, Nintendo marketed that for kids, and I think that culturally, video games were saw as a kid thing. Yep.
I have to admit I'm amazed, but again, we're in a world where people pay $100,000 to buy replicating cats. So, you know, I gotta go with it. And boy, making $1 million playing video game, maybe I'll tell my kids to take a different career path. Thanks. It's amazing stuff. Well done.
Thank you. But the other thing that just occurred to me as I was doing this, and I'm not an expert on this, I like video games and I'm interested in it. I was shocked by the growth of this market, is we really like war games. We really like strategy and war and battle.
I noticed towards the end there you had some shots of location-based entertainment using VR and room-size scale. That sort of is a wonderful bridge between the traditional sit-down console-type gaming and being able to move around and actually act like a gamer. Do you see that as picking up steam, and how do you think these location-based entertainment activities will fit in?
I think it is. I personally think it's going to be a natural progression to some extent. I think we're in the infancy. Like in one of the earlier presentations today, I believe actually it was the discussion of blockchain as compared to the progression of the internet. I mean, esports has been around really since 2000, and that even as you saw, it was really not much. So we're still in the infancy of this. Twitch and YouTube streaming is still fairly new, and these numbers are, I don't know that it's going to grow. I think the spectatorship is what drives esports. I think as long as the physical location-based sports can still tie into spectatorship, yes. If not, then it's a personal consumption thing, and you know, it's more debatable, in my opinion. Back here? Sure.
Yep. Sorry. Hey there, Jazz Ray from NEP. Esports is a growing part of our business as well. That it reminds me, seeing all the war games, of the last Starfighter idea, some from the 80s. Obviously, there are pilots piloting real drones, and you have these gamers. Do you think there's ever going to be a cross between the two?
I would be terrified if there was, but usually what I fear is what ends up happening. So. Also, Ender's Game. I had some channeling of Ender's Game in there too. Is there another?
Yeah, you have this feeling that in a few years' time we'll look back and say, there was this time when we used to call this eSports. You know, like as if we talk about other sport as just sport.
Yeah.
When actually, you know, ice hockey and soccer and gymnastics were totally different things requiring totally different kinds of coverage. And I guess it's moving fast, but can you yet see a kind of any clear separation out into particular kinds of e-sport, particular kinds of consumption distribution mechanism?
The MOBAs, the 5-on-5 team strategies, seem to be, anything that involves a team gets people really interested, and I think that's where it drives social interest, because you can log offline, go with a bunch of folks and play, and then get excited to go watch it again online.
And thank you, Josh.